Wish Mary was
Me too.
something really bad.
Don't let me forget I put that coffee right there. I need to get that
She had to
put away before it gets knocked on the floor. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Bible study of Second Chronicles, those who are here and those who are online, and I appreciate those who are online traveling. And before we get started, let's go ahead and open with a prayer. Almighty, gracious, and loving Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day, this beautiful day, and the opportunity we have to come together with you and study your word and learn to apply it to our lives. We ask that this study be pleasing in your sight, that it be scripturally sound, that it strengthen us as we seek to take your word out to the world and live as Christians, that we learn from these examples in the Old Testament as we have been directed to do, and that we apply to the lessons that we must learn and the examples we must follow in the New Testament as well. Ask that you continue to guide us and protect us in all things that we do. We thank you for the safety that you've afforded those who have traveled here today, and we thank you for the safety of those who will come in for the regular service as well. We're grateful for those who have joined us in this study that enriches our understanding and to exhort each other and to accompany each other with. And we ask, Heavenly Father, that you bless our efforts to study your word. We ask that you be with those who are on the road and traveling and keep them safe until they return. We ask that you be with those who are at home today for one reason or another, and that George and Sophia are quarantined, and we're thankful that Cindy is coming off of her virus, and we note that Olin, although he has not gotten the virus, did also injure his hand yesterday, and we ask for rapid healing on that. We ask that you keep them safe and sound, and bring them back to those measures of health which are in accordance with your will. Now we ask that you be with Tammy Fletcher. We ask that you be with Jerry Terrell, and we're thankful for the procedure, and we ask for continued healing and rapid recovery, and we ask that you continue to strengthen the Terrells as they work to support each other. We're thankful that we have Esther back, and that she's up and firing on all cylinders, and we're grateful for you bringing her back to that measure of health which is in accordance with your will. We note that there are many upcoming evolutions on our schedule this month, and we ask that you bless us in all those endeavors, that you keep us all strong and healthy, and that those evolutions be pleasing in your sight. We ask that you continue to guide us and protect us. We ask that you be with our first responders and military personnel wherever they are, that you be with our governments, Father. And we ask in this upcoming election that people take a close, hard look at who their candidates are, and how they would best represent your values in the world. We ask that you guide and protect our nation, Father, as much as we will be guided. We ask for a spiritual revolution, for a religious revival in this country that would once more bring us back into your good standing. We continue to pray for this nation, and we continue to try to do our best to be those of the 3,000 who have not bowed their heads to bow. We ask that you continue to guide us and protect us in all things, and offer this prayer in the name of your precious Son. Amen. Oh, Second Chronicles. Now, let me see if I've got this thing, and I'm gonna jump through here a few things, and I note here that once again we talked about Jehoshaphat, who had allied himself with Ahab. Remember, Ahab is basically an idol worshiper. Okay, I mean, one of his wives is Jezebel. Okay, so think about that. But now he has another wife who has a daughter, and he marries her off to Jehoshaphat's son, Joram, or Jehoram, as he is called, and I think in First Kings. But we note that he sets the table when he does that. Remember how bad Jezebel was. Remember that these prophets that we talked about, who came to the king of Israel and came to Jehoshaphat, were basically the same prophets against which Elijah would stand up. Okay, and so we note that Jezebel and her influence is very, very strongly felt in the family in the palace. And so we see Jezebel's influence will eventually, by the time we get to, I think it's chapter 21 in Second Chronicles, we'll see that her influence on her daughter exerts the influence on Joram, which makes him one of the few bad kings of Judah. Okay? All right. So as we continue on, we note that we've gone through the alliance, and of course we note that what he wanted to do was go up against Ramoth Gilead, which had previously been Israel, part of the northern kingdom, but Syria had taken Ramoth Gilead and had taken everything basically on that side of the Jordan River away from the northern kingdom of Israel. And so now Ahab's looking for an alliance. Ahab's looking for an alliance to help him beat Israel at all costs. Jehoshaphat is looking for an alliance that helps him unite the northern and southern kingdoms again, apparently. And he's made some concessions that he cannot make. He started out well, but he made some bad concessions and some bad mistakes, and it almost cost him dearly, but he learned a great lesson, as we will see. Okay, so we see that we note that all those prophets of Baal, led by Zedekiah the son of Shenanah, had pushed both kings. Remember, had advised both kings that they could defeat Syria, go up against Syria, and they could defeat him. Now, I don't know whether the horns of iron are something that would imply a sort of a strategy, but I note that there is a battle formation that mimics the horns of the bull. Okay, and the northern African tribes and the Romans used it, and that is that you feign in advance. Okay, and that's the head of the bull. You feign in advance, and then you withdraw. The army charges in to push you back, and the horns of the bull close in behind and flank. So it's a military strategy as well, and it may have been that there was something there that was implied. But as we note this, we also note that they had Jehoshaphat rightly discerned that these priests or these prophets were not priests of Jehovah, prophets of Jehovah. And he said, we want a good prophet. We want a prophet of Jehovah. Do you not have a prophet of Jehovah? And so the king says, well, we've got Micaiah, but I hate him because he's a prophet of the Lord and he never tells me the truth. He never tells me the truth that I want to hear, okay? So he says, I'm going to bring him. I'll bring him at your request, but don't believe anything that he says. And so Micaiah comes up, and first of all, he's been warned to go along with the rest of the prophets. He said, if you're smart, you'll go along with us. So when the king asks him, the first thing that he says, of course, is, go up and prosper, and they shall be delivered into your hand. But there's five words he does not include in this prophecy that are always included in these prophecies. In the name of the Lord. Okay? Those words were not there. And I believe that because those words were not there, of course I believe is conjecture, but we note that the king discerns, that's the king of Israel, discerns that he's not telling him what he really wants him to say. And so he says, I've told you before to speak the truth in the name of the Lord. So what he asks for, he's going to get. So Micaiah tells them that's not going to happen. They're not going to persist. They're not going to succeed as a result of that. Okay. And so he tells them of the vision, and it's a vision of disaster. All of Israel scattered on the mountains as the sheep that have no shepherd, and let them return therefore every man to his house in peace. He's saying, don't do this. It's not going to go well for you. Okay, and so we get to verse 20, where we talk about how the Lord has actually hear the word of the Lord. I'm going to go to verse 18, okay? And if we can, I'm going to jump forward to that. We've already gone through the geography of it and everything. Yeah. Okay. So did I not tell thee that he would not prophesy good unto me, but evil? So the king of Israel says, see what I told you? To Jehoshaphat. All right. But now Micaiah is going to say, hear the word of the Lord. Verse 18. That's a big distinction between the feel-good statement that he made before, which was a lie to go along basically with all the others, okay, which he did. But then, of course, it's interesting that God moved the king of Israel to say, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. All right. So, verse 18, and Judy, are you reading today? Who's reading? Esther's reading. Okay. Verse 18, and Esther, you're reading from the New King James or King James? King James. All right. Esther's reading from the King James. So go ahead, please.
Again he said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting upon his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall entice Ahab, king of Israel, that he may go up Ramoth Gilead after this manner, and another saying after that manner? Then there came out a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, him. And the Lord said unto him, wherewith? I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And the Lord said, thou shalt entice him, and thou shalt also prevail. Go out and do even so.
Okay, so now I want to point out here that according to the Targum, okay, first off, the Targum is a commentary, and it's not necessarily divinely inspired at all. But it's interesting to note that according to the old Jewish rabbis and their commentary, okay, the one who came out with a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, "I will advise him," was Naboth of Jezreel. Does that name ring a bell? Okay. According to 1 Kings 21, the first 16 verses of that, Naboth of Jezreel was one of those prophets of Baal. Okay, and Ahab wanted his vineyard because it was right next to Ahab's property, and Ahab thought the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. And so Ahab offered to give him a land of greater value than what he had, but Naboth's answer was, this land is land that is inherited by my people. Okay? This is my land. This is my family's land, and I cannot give it up. Okay? So Ahab came home crestfallen. And Jezebel said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And so she engineered a slanderous move against Naboth and had him to death. And Ahab took Naboth's land. Okay? But now we see that Naboth is now one of those spirits that's in this picture, at least according to the Targum. And so we can see where that my guess is that it's an interesting story, totally unverifiable, but it's an interesting story to add a little bit of. And we note that there were a lot of juicy tidbits that were included in the Apocrypha, which are not considered to be canonical. Okay, but they provide a depth and a richness which makes it great literature, but don't really trust it. Okay, but I do know that whenever Jehoshaphat talks about the joining affinity with Ahab, that he had married his son off, Jehoram, his son off to Jehoshaphat's daughter by another, basically a concubine. Okay, not Jezebel's daughter, but another daughter from that harem, if you will. And Jezebel was the queen. She controlled what went on, how they were taught, how they were influenced, and she controlled the harem and used the harem to influence not only Ahab but others in the palace as well. And so So that's why we see that Ahab has turned out to be such a bad man, and Jehoram in Judah after him as well. All right. And so he talks about that lying spirit and says that he's put them in there. And I want to note that all of chapter 18 basically parallels 1 Kings 22. So when we go to do that study, we will probably come back and reference this just to compare notes and see if there's any additional information that was here in 2 Chronicles that might not be in 2 Kings, because we notice that there are a couple of discourses that we've already gotten from 2 Chronicles that are considered to be inspired and canon and canonical, and still are not included in Samuel and Kings. All right, so we see now that Zedekiah, if I can do that, and so there's the accusation. God has intentionally told these prophets, put a lying spirit in these prophets so that they would speak evil against you. Of course, that's a challenge. Now you've got two prophets. You've got one with one point of view and one with another point of view as we do this. So Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, came near and smote Micaiah on the cheek. Which way went the Spirit of the Lord for me to speak? Now, I want to talk about that a little bit. Which way went the Spirit of the Lord for me? Which of us is right? Okay, the Spirit of the Lord told me to slap you is basically what he said. This is God reaching out and slapping you. That's his accusation. I clarity between that and the also note that Jeremiah, the way they treated Jeremiah, Pashur, the son of Immer the priest, was chief governor in the house of the Lord and heard that against the king. And Pashur stocks in the high gate of Benjamin, which was by the house of the Lord. He threw him in stocks right next to the temple so that everybody could see him when they came to pray. All right. Now, we note also, if I can get this thing to work, suddenly doesn't want to work. I don't know where that is. There. In Matthew, we talk about Jesus and how he prophesied, and they spit in his face and buffeted him, and they smote him with the palms of their hand and said, "Prophesy unto us, thou Christ, who is he that smote thee?" And these men are saying the same thing. We're priests of God, and we're smiting you, we're hitting you. And so so that means that it's from our standpoint that God is at this point. So there's that. It wasn't that Jesus' face was covered. Jesus saw who hit him, but their point was that they were acting in God's stead when they did that. They were usurping. They were using the Lord's name in vain, essentially, as they did that, okay? And so we see that that's the same thing that's going on here. And now Micaiah says this, and I'm going to let you start reading right there. This is Micaiah's comeback.
22.
24. Yeah, you can do 22 if you want.
Now, therefore, behold, the Lord had put a lying spirit in the mouth of these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil against thee. Then Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, came near and smote Micaiah upon the cheek, and said, Which way went the Spirit of the Lord from me to speak unto thee? And Micaiah said, Behold, thou shalt see on that day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself.
So he's saying you're going to be running for your life. You're going to be hiding for fear of your life in not too distant future. Now remember that two prophets with different points of view here on the outcome, and only one prophet is right. And remember, according to Mosaic law, a prophet who prophesies falsehoods is punishable by death, stoning. Okay, so you see that we have the fault. So there's the. Micaiah is saying only one of this is going to come out of this. Only one of us is going to come out of this alive. Okay, all right. So now the king of Israel is. His priests have disgraced Micaiah, at least according to in their estimation. And so the king is now going to make a big show of having him dragged out of the presence of Jehoshaphat and sent off to the stocks. Go ahead.
Then the king of Israel said, Take ye Micaiah and carry him back to Amon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son, and say, put this fellow in the prison and feed him with water of affliction until I return in peace.
Until I safely return. So put him on bread and water till I safely return. And then when I come back, I'll kill him as a false prophet. That's basically what he's saying here at this point, okay? And so Micaiah's response is...
And Micaiah said, if thou certainly return in peace, then hath not the Lord spoken by me? And he said, hearken, all ye people.
So Micaiah has backed the Lord's word, directly challenged Zedekiah, directly challenged the king, and he's saying, if you come back alive, you deserve to die. He stood up to it and said, then if you come back alive, I'm a false prophet, and I deserve a false prophet's treatment, okay? So once again, he's reinforced that. Now, he's not only reinforced that from the standpoint of his, but he's also laying that charge at the feet of Zedekiah as well, okay? Sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander, right? Okay, all right. So keep going.
So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself and will go to the battle, but put thou on thy robes. So the king of Israel disguised himself, and they went to the battle.
Okay, now think about that for just a minute. But as we do that, I want to note that Micah has already said, thou shalt return. If thou returns in peace, then I am not a prophet of God. Note that Jeremiah, when Pashur had Jeremiah brought out of the stocks, he once again prophesied against Pashur, okay, and that funny name there means that I will make thee a terror to myself. For thus saith the Lord, behold, I will make thee a terror to thyself and to all thy friends. I don't think I can wrap my mouth around that word. Magamisabed. But anyway, for thus saith the Lord, behold, I will make thee a terror to your enemies. So he's doubling down on his prophet here as he's brought before the king. As well he should have, okay? And so then we note that the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat of Judah have gone up to battle. But now listen, look at this. Look at this cowardly thing that the king of Israel said. I will disguise myself and I will go to the battle, but put thou on thy robes. So the king of Israel to the battle. So now the king of Israel is king. He's dressed like a common man. And furthermore, how he got Jehoshaphat to put on his own robes, maybe what he said was, here, I'll give you my suit of armor, like Saul did anyway. So there was something that clearly recognized, he was clearly recognizable as the king. Okay, now, why did he do that? Remember Balaam's false prophecy, or they called Balaam, the Moab, king of Moab called Balaam to prophesy against God, and Balaam couldn't do it. So, and we note that Saul disguised himself at one time or another because God went away from that. I don't know if I've got that or not. That Saul disguised himself. In 1 Samuel 28, it talks about how Samuel said, the Lord is not with you anymore. And so when Saul sought the Lord's advice before he went into battle, he couldn't find him. Okay, well, as it turns out, Samuel was already dead at that point. And so he went to a witch to try to call up Samuel's spirit. Okay, and so he did so by disguising himself. Of course, God, through the witch, told Saul that he knew who he was. Okay, and so that didn't work out very well for him. But we note that he also disguised himself, and so we have to ask ourselves why that, and we'll take a look at how it worked for him. And I want to note here that A, he may have been cowardly, but B, God used that as in the subsequent event. Reading, if you would, please.
Now the king had commanded the captains of the chariots that were with him, saying, fight ye not with small or great, save only with the king of Israel.
Now what does that mean? Well, that means kill the king and the army will quit. That's what it means. because apparently the army was not fully behind this king. Okay, this king had fomented insurrection in the way that he treated his people, and so they said, if you kill the king, their army will quit. So they were targeting who they thought was Ahab. But actually it was Jehoshaphat in Ahab's clothes. So that doesn't seem too good, and so things rapidly deteriorate from there. Go ahead.
And it came to pass, when the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, that they said, it is the king of Israel. Therefore they encompassed about him to fight. But Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him, and God moved them to depart from him.
So, yeah, and that's an interesting point, that God moved those men to recognize, and we'll see in the next verse, they got close enough to him with an arrow, but they decided to go to him. When they got close enough, they said, that's not Ahab. Okay, and so they withdraw and said, where is he? Now we don't know where he is. We can't see another king on the battlefield. What are we going to do? All right, go ahead.
For it came to pass that when the captains of the chariots perceived that it was not the king of Israel, they turned back again from pursuing him. And a certain man drew a bow that at a venture, and smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness. Therefore, thine hand, that thou mayest carry me, for I am wounded.
Now, first off, you have to ask yourself, was that a lucky shot? Okay, he just decided, well, I'm going to just shoot at whoever's in a chariot. Basically what he said, this is not the man, so I'm just going to shoot whoever's in a chariot. And he just picked a chariot at random and he fired a shot. Remember now that they had been directed not to go to battle against anybody, not to target anybody but the king of Israel. All right, so we note here that that this certain man, now according to the Targum, here's another. Now this again, remember Naaman, the king of the Syrian army, who was the leper, who went to Elisha, and Elisha didn't even come and meet him. He just said, "Tell him to go dip in the waters of the Jordan River 7 times." Right? This Naaman, and who was cured because he did that, and for no other reason, by dipping himself in the waters of the Jordan 7 times. 6 times wouldn't have done it. Okay? So he obeyed the word of the Lord to make that happen. All right. Now I note here that according to the Targum, this is the same Naaman who fired, this Naaman is the same man who fired that arrow and randomly hit the king. Now, take that with a slight grain of salt, but note that in 2 different places we see that according to this account, a random shot hit the king of Israel and injured him. Okay? Continuing on.
And the battle increased that day. Howbeit the king of Israel stayed himself up in his chariot against the Syrians until the even, and about the time of the sun going down, he died. So
we note that he actually put on a valiant effort to continue to sustain himself and keep his army rallied around him, more or less. And so he fought against the Syrians, whether they pursued him and he ran successfully or what, but he died of his wounds on the battlefield as a result of that arrow, that lucky arrow shot. Okay, this is kind of like an Achilles story. I don't know if you know the story of Achilles, and I'm not going to go into it. But this is one of those accounts. And so we note that despite the fact that he disguised himself, okay, and that emphasizes the strength of his Micaiah's prophecy, that despite the fact that he disguised himself and put the other king in his clothes, I still don't understand how Jehoshaphat went along with that. I still don't get it. But anyway, we see that despite that, Micaiah's prophecy came true. Okay? All right. So, Jehoshaphat The battle is over. They withdrawn. Syria holds on to the land that Israel had given up on the east side of the Jordan River. Okay, and then we see that Jehoshaphat, and this is entitled his reforms. That we see that Jehoshaphat goes back home. All right, go ahead.
And Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned to his house in peace to Jerusalem. And Jehu, the son of Hanani, the seer, went out to meet him and said,
he's met by a prophet, and God's going to chastise him for forming the alliance with Ahab. Go ahead.
And said to King Jehoshaphat, shouldest thou help the ungodly and love them that hate the Lord? Therefore is wrath upon
Okay, so from before the Lord, all right. And so he says, this wrath is upon thee from before Jehovah. So it sounds like that Jehoshaphat might have lost some men in this conflict too, and that God is. But remember that sometimes things to anger God, but God is merciful because it fulfills their needs. And so I note here that this Jehu, son of Hanani, carried out a prophecy against Baasha, the king of Asa, the king of Judah. All right, and so and remember, Asa was Jehoshaphat's father. Okay, so this same Baasha had carried out a prophecy. Same prophet had carried out a prophecy against Baasha. So that means that he lived in that area of that area which would be the kingdom. And so as the king is returning to this, the son of Hanani, obviously a faithful prophet, okay? And remember that there were many. Remember the account where Jezebel chased Elijah into the wilderness, and he hid, and he 3,000 have not bowed their heads to Baal. Apparently, Jehu was one of these, okay, and who had prophesied against Ahab, and now partially against, but we'll see that. He's prophesying to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah at this point. So now he says, you've messed up. Go ahead.
never thee, in that thou hast taken away the groves out of the land, and hast prepared thine heart to seek God.
So we note that Jehoshaphat earlier, and then he formed an alliance with and for whatever reason, he might have thought that he was trying to unite the kingdom. I can't get inside his head, but for whatever reason, he formed an alliance that he shouldn't have formed. They say, what is it they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Okay, so here we go. Now we see that Jehoshaphat is back in Jerusalem. Verse 4.
Jehoshaphat dwelled in Jerusalem, and he went out again from Beersheba to Mount Ephraim, and brought them back unto the Lord God of their fathers.
So he sent word out. Not only did he to the northern kingdom and said, we on our side, come join us. All right, at that point. All right. So, and continuing on.
And he said, judges in the land throughout all the fenced cities of Judah, city by city, and said to the judges, take heed what ye do, for ye judge not for the Lord, who is with you in the judgment.
Okay, you judge not for the man, but for the Lord. So do it. Don't do what God wants you to do. Do it in accordance with God's laws, is what he's saying. And we note here that Jesus was talking to them about taking brothers to judgment, and he was talking about the fact that they must adhere to the Jewish law, okay, in the presence of two witnesses or one condemned. And so Jesus says that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And that is a principle that was established under the old covenant and has continued under the new covenant in the way that we conduct church business as well, okay? And so we see that that principle is there, and that is exactly what he's talking about. He says, do it right and respect God. Keep.
For now, let the fear of the Lord be upon you. Take heed and do it. For there is no iniquity with the Lord our God, respect of persons, nor taking of gifts.
Now you're going to hear that again in the lesson today, okay? And that is the principle that God is A, not a God of confusion, and B, that God is not a of persons. And I'm going to use those passages to illustrate a point that I'm going to bring up. But I want you to note that that's in 2 Chronicles chapter 19, and it's interesting that they have come together just at this particular time, that these passages have come together. God, persons, and we note that that is also in Hebrews. Okay, so continuing on.
In Jerusalem did Jehoshaphat set of the Levites and of the chief of the fathers of Israel for the judgment of the Lord, and for controversies when they returned to Jerusalem. And he, thus shall they do in the future, faithfully and with a perfect heart.
Yeah, it's a lot at stake. You're basically saying, if you don't do this according to the Lord's will and according to the word, to the law of the Lord, you're going against God. So I'm not going to be the one that punishes you. God's going to be the one that punishes you. And so you need to remember that principle. All right? So go ahead.
And what cause soever shall come to you of your brethren that dwell in their cities, between blood and blood, between law and commandment, statutes and judgments, you shall even warn them that they trespass not against the Lord, and so wrath come upon you and upon your brethren. Do this, and ye shall not trespass.
That's an important thought. Blood and blood. When he talks about blood and blood, there are disputes, matters of inheritance and property. That's a civil matter, okay? But there's also matters of wrongful death, opposed to murder, and so those are the decisions that they make sense, because that's a city of refuge. All right. So now we look at the blood and blood between the law and the commandments. In charge, when he says between law and the commandments, he says anything that's not according to God's law is a civil matter, and I'm putting you in charge of those two. Okay. All right. And you shall warn them. And no, he says, warn them to trespass not against the Lord, and so wrath come upon you and upon your brethren. And so if you don't do this, okay, the watchman is, and that is a comment that we find a principle in Isaiah. I don't know if I've got that here or not. I guess I do. He says, I have set watchmen upon thy walls, O Jerusalem, which shall never hold their peace day or night. Ye shall make mention of the Lord and keep not silence, and give him no rest till he establish, until he make Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Now that's an example of the watchman's responsibility to speak the truth. But that particular passage also is prophecy of the coming of the Christian age. Christianity, never relenting godlessness. Okay? And that all the governments will be consumed, as we say. Okay, and of course we note that Daniel had those visions as well. Okay, but the psalmist in Psalm 127 writes this, and I want you to take this with you as we will close with chapter 11, and we will basically be done for the day on this part. And then, but as we do so, I note that the psalmist writes, "Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it, and except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain." They have to rely on God if they're going to do it right and they're going to be preserved. When they don't, they suffer. All right? And that applies to the northern kingdom and to Judea as well as they do this. And so we close with verse 11. Go ahead and close us out there, please.
And behold, Amariah, the chief priest, is over you in all matters of the Lord. And Zebediah, the son of Ishmael, the ruler of the house of Judah, for all the king's matters. Also, the Levites shall be officers before you. Deal courageously, and the Lord shall be with the good.
Okay, so first rule is do things in accordance with God. And then he says the Levites shall be above you in all manners. He's already charged the Levites to do things according to God. He's charged the administrators to do things according to God. That's rule one. Rule two is, in the event of any other questions, see rule number one. Okay? All right. So that's where we are, and we will start in chapter 20. Are there any comments or questions or anything before we break? We've got a lot more. Oh, there it is. There's my marker. We'll start chapter 20 when we come back together again for our morning lesson next week. Thank you for your attention. Back at the top of the hour for our service. Once again, thank you. How'd you leave your keys in the car? Back it around. So Kaylin assumed that Caesar was going to lock the garage.